So as I've already, well, not me in particular, but as has been talked, or has been talked before about this hard problem of consciousness, especially in understanding it as illusory or elusive, as it might be to the majority of people who can't reprimand sort of an intellectual way of thinking, or I guess an entirely intellectual way of thinking, like one line of logic, like I was talking about. You could have a traversity in reasoning and logic for the value equation, and then you could also have the six mass extinction. So you could have life extinction, would follow your lines of logic further than accepting a six mass extinction. So I mean, really, if that's all you're dealing with, um, and you go well, and you choose to uphold this six this six mass extinction, then yeah, you're gonna have a hard problem of consciousness. Consciousness is going to fail you because you're going to see it as an illusion. You're going to see it as religion, like a religious boundary, like this whole ethical problem, like you're not allowed to make decisions for other people. But if we had a common understanding of what people are doing by uh, nataling, procreating, things like that, or allowing the consciousness to avail in nature, we'd have a different stream of thoughts. Now, obviously, that stream of thought seems irreparable because it is, so it's not attractive to the common man, and so it may never be accepted. It doesn't mean that it's not there or it's not a real echo chamber. I mean, it's almost like an iceberg to the like the common triangular thought form with maybe ethics and morals at the top, and then at the bottom you have a like a serious triangular iceberg, and that's sort of the logic or line of reasoning that people may come back to. Could be something like atheism or uh, opposition to theology. And when people start coming into opposition of theology, that's when cracks can be formed into sort of like this whitewashing of logic, and that can lead to just this longer, more extensive form of thought than what is subsequently like understood as just the six mass extinction. Okay, so life extinction would always be in opposition to the six mass extinction, and in that sense, in that quality, you don't have any reason to disbelieve in it. But it'll always be there, and it'll always be the more logical outcome in terms of the or in terms of the value equation. It's just you're going to have a lot of hangups with people like this. Will say, well, there's a hard problem, or there's a hard problem of consciousness, um, which needs to be understood that there's it's sort of quantifying that, well, every consciousness is their own consciousness, but there needs to be boundaries in what we can do with those consciousness. Again, it's a moral ethical argument. I haven't listened to the video, I don't want to, but I know that's what he's going to talk about because these people just repeat themselves. And then the illusion problem. I mean, I'm not saying in every realm these people are going to, in every subject like health or fitness or something, they might have degrees in which they can elevate the conversation, but again, in logic and reasoning, these normies, they're not going to be able to elevate the conversation. They're just not going to be able to because they can't understand. Um, they're not going to be able to understand this value equation again. So they're going to use moral, like a moral code to be able to understand how each mind has its own boundary, and you have to be able to respect those boundaries and such. And the illusion problem can be sort of the same thing, that we will ever have power over other people's moral, um, ethical values and things like that. I mean, is what I mean, I would play like a little bit of it, but I probably will play a little bit of it. There was one more where it was talking about basically basically how 7 out of 8, yeah, 7 people out of 8 will die over the next 2 decades. I didn't see that. That's a little bit interesting. Well, it's people talking about how it's going back and forth between um, propaganda between, well, the human extinction process will start, this decade or in 5 decades, and it's kind of just fluctuating between that, and it's either an extreme number like the next 2 decades, or it could be the next 4 decades. So it's always just fluctuating in and out of that. But again, I didn't really think he was going to say anything too like over the top, whatever. Should be all MP3, but yeah, I'm kind of just saying that there's a hierarchy of morals and ethics in the society, and that people aren't going to be able to circumnavigate past that, or they're not going to be able to see sort of the iceberg that is below all this morals and ethics. And they're going to run these consciousness triangles,
psoriasis,
um,
burning,
to convince and compete.
My skin was no longer
They
mine.
are
My psoriatic arthritis.
they're using logic and everything like that, but
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to say that's
And
not
live.
the
Okay.
case. So
Welcome back, YouTube, to another live stream and video recording for afterwards. In this live stream and video recording, we're going to be covering hearing versus listening, part two, and please. Okay. Anyways, it's just going to happen. It's going to happen no matter what. I can't really do anything about it. So yeah, I mean, just get past it. Okay. Just be mature. Just get past it. It's what is conscious comes down to, that's what I talked about at the beginning of this video. So I'll go down the list of like what the common theories are of this, and then the one that I adhere to the most, or I'll say I'll provide the evidence, and then like we can see like which one I apply to the most, because any of them can be true. Okay, just like, for example, it could be true. This is trivially true, what I'm about to say. So pay attention. It could be true that there are invisible unicorns.
yeah, I mean, he does this whole thing. I mean, he's not really getting to any point. So again, I might as well just skip this shit. I wanted to actually um, try to better understand how basically life extinctionism is it's, it's more like an anti-religious argument more than a logical argument. That's probably a good way to put it. With the Jordan Peterson, obviously it's going to run slow. But again, I don't really think you're gonna be able to. There's not gonna be any way to really absurd or deduce just the logic of a life extinction argument, and you're always going to be it's always going to be capsized by an anti-religious propagation. Is kind of what my point is, especially when it comes to psychology, because if you call, you can't really call, you can't really call forth consciousness in an argument like this. Like it's just not.
In Dostoevsky's book Crime and Punishment, he has his main character, Raskolnikov, decides that he's going to.
So it's just not really possible to overcome this this way. And then one more thing with like this linear way of thinking, it cannot exist. The linear logic cannot exist in a quantum mechanical universe because quantum mechanic calculations always bring you to nonlinear facets of the universe. Quantum mechanics deals like almost infinitely. I had no pun intended with cosmology, and cosmology is equated to just our understanding of the universe. And so our understanding of the universe always gets brought to basically infinity, and that's why sort of these circles of reasoning, like in circular reasoning, you can get into another circle, um, but the circle of reasoning will always divert. Well, I should say it always diverts, full circle, and there'll be like comprehension in that case. But in the case of quantum mechanics, there can be no um, circular reasoning. That's because their vectors and their scalars are infinitely possible, infinitely done in their infinite universe. Therefore there is there's no understandable etching that has like an edge or something like life extinction would definitely LE would definitely have like an edge of embarkment, but in terms of six mass extinction, well, that still has infinite opportunities. You still have the chance that there might be an asteroid or there might be something else. But as far as when we run out of food, we run out of food. Um, yeah. So I mean, you could see, yeah, you know, I think once we kind of go back to hunting and gathering, I mean, that's probably what is going to happen. Um, we might I mean, could we slow back down and go back into sort of where we were before, just like Stone Ages, except there's no animals. Like the soil is going to be a lot worse. So, I mean, that will all be interesting. I guess the part that a lot of people focus on is how we are going to, our huge growth in population is basically going to diverge or inverse. And the way that we're able to sort of control pregnancies a lot better is going to go back down, and sickness as well. So, like a lot of that might be happening, which I mean is pretty apparent that it's going to happen. And again, you only get one opportunity to sort of shut things down, and again, it's going to become what I believe has become like an anti-religious notion. So,
To commit a murder, and he has very good justification for the murder. And Dostoevsky's very good at this. He puts his characters into very, very difficult moral situations and gives them full justification for pursuing the for pursuing the pathway that they're pursuing. And so Raskolnikov, he's broke and starving. He wants to go to law school. His sister's about to prostitute herself.
yeah, I mean, I don't even really want to get much further into this. It's just going to be these same self-righteous stories. There's like some platitude, some moral escape and being self-righteous and talking about a story about oneself who was able to overcome and able to find moral principles and yeah, no, so it's not there's no exception to these moral principles that we have in mind. It's just the fact that we're recreating moral principles for you know less better judgment or death and all this stuff, like more diseases, and then what's going to be more crippling in the future. We don't have any place on consciousness in that matter. And again, so these one-way linear, well, I should say, these one-way infinite streets of what occurs and what doesn't occur. According to the intelligent people, it's supposed to be that way. There's supposed to be moral codes and an ethical code, ethical boundaries, and things like that. And nobody can push a button on those things without there being major drawbacks. So it becomes a anti-religious argument. The life extinction or the right to die, like this becomes a like wholeheartedly anti-religious argument, which is unfortunate, but it's probably the truth once again. That nobody wants to let go of it, nobody wants to lose their religion. I mean that's quite a big thing. People start acting like Satanists and stuff like that. Nobody would want to be around. Nobody would want to be around the church if they were all Satanists. So um, yeah, and then just entailing, well, what would the future be like? And maybe it'll be more pleasant. I mean, obviously, there'll be more death in pregnancies and breeding and things like that, but that doesn't seem to bother people. So, because, yeah, there's a moral code and an ethical currency or something that people like to exchange. And, yeah, I mean, these people, again, they can't think for themselves. They think religiously, they think dogmatically, and yeah, I mean, it's not 1984. It's 2084, year of the Stone Age, and these people are in denial of that, and so they'd rather just execute their moral compass and say, well, yeah, we're doing the right thing by whatever, whatever is morally, satisfying. So yeah, it's not anything good, but there always has to be like some religious platitude, and you just see that everywhere. So yeah, it's insane. Um, it's unfortunate to have to say that, but yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's the truth. If you're normal in this, if you're sane in a sick society, then what does that make the society? It's just a sick society. It's an insane society. So yeah, but just this triangular thinking and what they hold at the top, and then there's like a just a triangular iceberg below them, and they don't seem to be able to see that, and they don't understand. They basically don't understand the calculus the calculus and the calculating in quantum mechanics can be very relatable to how I guess people's line of thinking, people's what people find coherency in. They find more coherency and logic and reasoning because these are real subjective things. These are never going to be. I mean, you could say they're objective realities, but you'd have to have something like the value equation Um, but in terms of how these people program and operate, they operate in levels, and this goes for everyone. You don't need to understand calculus, but you have to be able to understand that people's minds are constantly calculating. And in that sense, you can see a lot of this goes to infinity. A lot of these videos they go from to infinity. And in that sense, that's what we're merely doing is having a conversation about infinity, but trying to subtract or attract ourselves to the idea of a linear equation. So something set apart or something set aside from infinity. But these people don't really seem to be able to do that because to them, moral code and ethical code is attached to infinity. They don't for consciousness for humans and for like a consciousness problem or an illusion. They see that as something as um, like a principle that has to live on or a principle that can never die. Because there is a lot of contradictions going on here, especially if you try to reason with a Descartesian universe that is substantially always in uh, progression. So I'm not saying all this stuff is useless, but you have to be able to understand this calculus. These things are any type of mathematics actually is really trying to proportionalize your thinking into an infinity. Because if you didn't have all, I mean, you could say all mathematics, um, maybe even still philosophical. That's the tricky part. Maybe even philosophical infinity, because you have to be able to understand that. Yeah, if there was life extinction, then that would go into infinity as well. So there is that aspect to it, but mostly I've found that the calculus. I mean, I could